This mission of mine will be successful when television programs and films no longer show people with phones against their heads.
You've got the whole world in your hand. You've got the whole wide world in your hand. You've got the whole world in your hand.
Through this special TV offer, you can receive a Motorola flip phone with Cellular One service for just pennies a day. Now everyone can enjoy the freedom of a personal cellular phone. You can make a call anywhere or get a call anytime.
Hi.
Stuck in traffic? Call and change that meeting before you're late.
Yeah, Dan, let's change the meeting to 10.
Change of plans?
Call me if you need.
No problem. With
Are those what I call cancer sticks, out of their ears, and there's no cell phone you being used as an alarm clock on the nightstand. There should be no cellular devices in bedroom.
Is something standing between you and your happiness? It was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal, and I want to share that with you. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor, BetterHelp, support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today.
As a teenager, I decided to live better, so I gave up the meat, eggs, and cheddar. At 20 and 30, I wanted more, so I strengthened my mind and my core. Living a life that is healthier and wealthier because I choose health.
All right, guys, welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Lessie. Now, as a father of a 2-year-old, I'm hyper aware of what my daughter sees, hears, and touches. But lately, I've been thinking about what she's exposed to and that I can't even see, the invisible stuff. I'm talking about the waves, the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell phone signals, things that surround her all day. And I realize she's exposed to it way more than I ever was as a kid. Today we have Dr. Beverly Jensen, an expert on electromagnetic field exposure and public health. She's here to help us understand what these invisible waves, which are RFEMFs, are doing to our bodies, and more importantly, to our children. Dr. Jensen, welcome to the I Choose Health podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Stefan.
Definitely. And Beverly, I want to start with the basics. What exactly are RFEMFs and where do they show up in our daily lives?
Okay, the term EMF means electromagnetic frequencies. I prefer to use EMR, electromagnetic radiation, because that's what we're really talking about, and that's what the real problem is. And where is it? Absolutely everywhere. And you're right. It was not a problem when you were a child, and I raised my kids, who are now 40 to 43, without this. But today's children, anybody born after 2000, and especially 2010, they're being subjected to this. And it could be managed a whole lot better if people were just aware of the issues and aware of the problems it's causing. And the industry has not wanted us to be aware. There is on page 19 of the itsy-bitsy type of the manual in the iPhones a warning about electromagnetic frequencies. But who reads it? Not 1 in 100 people read it. So anyway, where to start? It became I think it was only 10 years ago in which the number of cell towers began to proliferate. And it's kind of interesting that that term proliferate's always been used relative to nuclear weapons and very dangerous things. And I think it's also very relative to what we're talking about. Because as the number of towers increases and the level of the gigahertz increases, the level of the danger is multiplying. Does that answer your question? Or begin to?
I think it begins to answer the question as to, what we're really exposed to in terms of the different ways that we're exposed to it and those frequencies that you're talking about. So I think that is definitely helpful. And I feel like because we use them so much, they're so much a part of our day to day lives, we don't see them as harmful because I think
Yeah.
we think that if we're going to be using something that I see as an assistance or an aid to my daily life, why would I use something that is harmful? But more often than not, I think as human beings, I think most times we try to do the best, but oftentimes we're doing things that are still harmful to us and people around us.
Yes, like as I said, the industry has really tried to not let us be informed, and this can be managed better. But I think if we're looking at what's the effect on the children, the effects begin actually in utero. Especially the last trimester of pregnancy and the first weeks of after birth are critical that there's no fields of radiation around the children. That means that when friends want to take pictures of your newborn, they've got the phones on airplane mode, and you keep your phones away from the baby. And when she's still carrying it, pregnant women should be wearing a shield over their abdomen all the time. Actually, in China, that's required by law. When pregnant women are on the streets, police will check that they're wearing a belly guard to protect the child. This is out in public spaces. But we need it even more so in our homes because that is where we've got the highest concentration of it's devices we're choosing to use ourselves, just not aware of what's the downside.
I think when people hear radiation, they think of X rays or nuclear plants. How is RF EMF radiation different from that? And is it really something to worry about?
Okay, that's what's affecting us is what's called non-ionizing radiation. So on the spectrum, it's at the lower end. It does not mean that it's not affecting us. The Soviets have done the most extensive research on this. They started 1960 until the early 90s. The Soviets did 800 studies on the effects of radiation ELF, extremely low frequencies in the workplaces, the effects on their workers. And they would study for how long they were in the factory, and then when they left the factory, how long it took them to recover, and what was the condition of the environment in which they did. If they did. What they found is if they spent 2 years in these factories with low EMF, and we could consider our own homes low EMF right now, unless you've taken these steps to reduce it, that after 2 years in that environment, and they went to an environment that still had radio frequencies, they did not recover. Anyway, and we're talking about physics, so it doesn't matter if those studies were done in the 60s or the 90s or, 5 years ago. The difference, it's gotten worse because there's now much heavier concentration of towers, and they were measuring 2.4 gigahertz. Now we're dealing with 5 gigahertz. And interestingly, Russia is not allowing G to be used in the commercial sector, in it for only military use, which I think tells us a lot.
That's really interesting, man. And I'm amazed that it feels that in America, especially when it comes to the science, we're always playing like catch up science in the sense of we're always kind of lagging behind when it comes to the prevention side of things or just making sure that we're safe in general. We rather deal with the consequences or the fallout after. In your time working in this field, what can you say about that in terms of, and maybe this is just my opinion, about the West reaction to these different issues that we come upon.
You're right. In Europe, there's what's called the precautionary principle, and that is if there's some research that indicates that something is harmful, then they don't wait until there's more evidence. They will stop whatever the chemical is being used or whatever activity is being done. That the precautionary principle is what's used in Europe, and we have the opposite idea in the United States. And in the U.S., you're innocent till proven guilty. So we wait until we see what's the consequences of something instead of, when some initial research shows that there's a problem, we don't take action. And so you're absolutely right in the way we manage health in the United States. So this puts us at a great disadvantage. Us.
Now, I know that you studied how these frequencies interact with human biology. Just tell us what actually happens when our cells or our children's developing brains are exposed to these waves long term.
It doesn't even have to be long term. It can just be occasional. The American Pediatric Society recommends that children under 2 have no screen time. And that means not only are they not sitting in front of an iPad or a laptop, but that there's no devices around them like telephone chargers, cell phones being used by somebody else. And then from between ages 3 and 5, the children have no more than 1 hour a day, and that is being accompanied by an adult choosing the program and interacting with them so that they actually learn from watching this program. Because what happens with the children is that the frequencies interfere with the development of the part of their brain which develops the intellect. And that's language development also. This is the youngest children. And then as they get older, it affects their ability to socialize. And this goes on for over the years. But in utero, and in the first few weeks, there should be no phones around the infants. And this is just not recognized. I mean, I know in hospitals, a friend who's a nurse talked about one of the patients. She's an obstetrics nurse. So one of the patients with a newborn, the family comes in to visit, and it's four children and dad, and they've all got electronic devices. All of them, emitting the radiation from these devices. So the hospitals aren't paying attention. The medical system isn't. It's going to really be up to the public, to us, to take control of these.
And when I was thinking about our subject, I wanted to do some research on it, and I came across a 2019 study from Aaron Scase, and it was mentioned that the IARC classified RFEMS as a Group 2B carcinogen. If that's the case, why are we still using them or using these products so freely, literally handing it to our kids every day?
It's because, and actually, I think the WHO has now labeled it as a carcinogen of the 2B class. But that was a result of a study. There was actually 2 major studies. One was done in the United States by the National Toxicology Program. It was a multi-year study with, I don't know how many thousands of the lab rats. A similar study was going on at the Ramazzini Institute in Italy, and they had 2,500 rats. It's interesting. These critters have very similar genetics and social behavior as we do. So they are very good subjects for the study of this. And as soon as the National Toxicology Program announced their results, I think it was March or April of 18, Ramazzini Institute said, us too. They found the same brain cancers in the rats as did those in Washington, D.C., and they found the same heart schwannomas. So and the Italians said to the WHO, we recommend that it become labeled as a not a possible carcinogen, but probable carcinogen, class A. And that just hasn't happened. And that's because of the influence of the industry on these boards that determine what's going to be the standards. Yeah. So it's going to be up to us to recognize what are the sources of these frequencies and to keep them away from the kids. And I think there's two major points here that we need to remember. One is that we're all electrical beings. I mean, everything in our body is directed by electrical impulses from the heart or the brain. And two, every device that sends radio signals and receives radio signals is dangerous. It's emitting radiation. I think everybody's aware that radiation is not a good thing, that we need to avoid it. I learned that as a kid growing up in Okinawa. My dad was developing this technology, satellite communication technology, for the U.S. Army Signal Corps. And every time, and the tools in his workshop was an oscilloscope and a Geiger counter. He was measuring radiation. Every time I wanted to visit, I would get the warning that if it sends radio signals and receives radio signals, it's dangerous. Something that you mentioned is about the things around us. Bluetooth has 7 times the amount of radiation as does Wi-Fi. It's intense. I mean, I recently returned a product because it could not be connected by Wi-Fi but required Bluetooth. I am too sensitive to those frequencies to ever spend 30 seconds on Bluetooth.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I think, we use so many Bluetooth devices these days, from, the headphones that we use, whether that's overhead headphones or in-ear headphones. Like I think about the fact that we went from kind of like these to the small in-ear that this is like radiation directly into the ear.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is it more an issue of lessening our exposure, or is there a way of decreasing the potency of the effects of our EMF exposure on our bodies? What is really at the heart of the issue of us really stopping the level of danger that these waves are causing to our bodies?
Well, the primary principles of reducing our exposure is time and distance. Keeping away from the devices as far as you can. I mean, I remember as a kid, there was even discussions of TV screens. Were those bad for us? And our parents would always say, sit 6 to 8 feet back, not right in front of the screen. And this was our basic television screen. And so distance and time, the amount of time with these devices needs to be kept to a minimum, or interrupt is the word, your time when you're using them. Take breaks. And I mean, the solution is going to be to spend more time in nature doing earthing, grounding activities is the real solution. Now, in New York City, that's an issue. You asked about the effects on the body. There's been a recent study is comparing the chromosomes of the DNA condition of people who have lived within 500 meters of a cell tower for 5 years or more compared to those who do not live anywhere near a cell tower. And there was a statistically significant difference in the chromosome condition of these 2 samples of population who had been living near a cell tower, had chromosome damage, which means broken chromosomes, which means DNA damage, which leads to diseases. So, you've got some other questions you wanted to ask.
No, I mean, this is great because, as I said, this issue needs to be paid attention to a little bit more, especially since it definitely affects us on the day-to-day, right? And it's so wide-reaching because the effects are not just things like cancer, but we see that there are other potential effects, right? So I know that, and I'm wondering if there are specific studies that show measurable effects like sleep issues, attention problems, developmental concerns, especially in kids with higher EMF exposure?
I've got some of those articles on my websites. There's actually two websites, You and EMF, and that's sort of the child of Women's Medicine Bowl, which I've had since 2003. Yeah, there's studies reported there, and some of the developmental issues is that the kids who are, first of all, I think I mentioned this before, that the children have got thinner skulls, and their nervous systems and their brains are developing. So these frequencies are interfering with this development. Particularly, and they've measured this now that they've got, the tools to do this, which wasn't the case 20 years ago, but they can see that it's affecting the part of the brain where the intellect develops. And that includes language development. It's in the under 2 years of age. And then as the child grows older, it's affecting their ability, their social interaction. I mean, you learn to become a human being by interacting with other humans and not with screens.
Right, right.
They're actually selling robots now who will be your child's friend. It's so sad.
Yeah.
And I've seen a college course, a class in which there is basically teaching people how to interact with humans. I mean, I think this is directed towards people who are spending their whole lives in front of in screens and developing this technology. They've lost the ability to communicate with other humans. And then, I mean, this is reflected in the autism rates now, not just by the children, but by adults.
Yeah, and I see the consistent challenge. Like I'm looking at my daughter now, she's 2, and that's my only child. And, I just see the struggle it is, even though we bring the kids to the park just to get these kids to interact with each other. And so we're so separated by technology, surprisingly, especially through social networks. Social networks have done the opposite of what they were supposed to do. And so I think, as you're rightly saying, the real cure, or at least one of the things that could help and should help, is just us getting back out there in nature, connecting with each other. And I think that's so vital.
Yeah, it's critical. And when you go to the park, how many of those parents were not sitting there on their phone? I mean, when it's interesting, Stefan, because when we start to look at how we're going to protect our children, the actions we need to take to protect the kids will also help our own health, protect us. But yeah, at the park, if you look around, there will be maybe 2 or 3 who are playing with the children or having a conversation with each other. But the majority will be sitting there looking at their cell phones while the child is playing in the sand or on the slide, on the playground equipment. That's not helping.
Yeah. And, we've all seen toddlers, glued to the iPads or phones. And from your perspective, how does early exposure to these devices shape a child's brain or long-term health?
Well, there's been some recent studies about looking. Actually, there was the meta-analysis of 49 different studies looking at the learning consequences or results of young people from ages 4 to 18. And what they found was that if they learned the information, they were reading from paper, that required a deeper grasping of the information than if it was on a screen. And so when they were tested as to recall, always the ones who had done the reading from paper excelled and exceeded those who were learning on screens. The same happens with typing on a keyboard instead of writing. In fact, someone told me that they've found that just writing in a journal, writing anything, actually helps people recover from mental traumas and illnesses. And it also prevents that from happening. So when I hear of schools who are thinking of eliminating handwriting as a course of study, it's very alarming, because this is how the brain learns, how it's embedded in our cells by the hand doing the activity, not by tapping on a keyboard. So it's got tremendous effects. Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering, if it's true, and just looking over the study from Aaron Skast, is it true that kids' developing bodies and brains absorb more radiation than adults do? And if so, how much more sensitive are they, and why?
They are more sensitive because, like I said, their skulls are thinner and their nervous system and brains are developing. So they are just much more susceptible to this radiation than are adults. And how it's affecting them is some of the things we've already talked about. The ability to develop language and to retain the information, to be able to recall it. All of that is affected by using screens instead of pencils and paper.
And I know that some people are going to listen to this podcast, this particular episode, and they're going to say that, the risk is exaggerated, that EMFs are everywhere, and there's nothing we can do. What do you say to that kind of skepticism?
That's exactly what the telecom industry wants you to think. But it jeopardizes the health of the whole species. And it doesn't have to be this way. I mean, we can learn how to control this and manage it if we're first aware of the issues, the problems it does create. Yeah.
Now, beyond limiting the screen time, what are some practical steps that families can take right now to reduce daily exposure, especially for young children?
Okay. In every home I have gone into, except one, where the router was in the bedroom, which is even worse news, the router was sitting in the living room, square in front of the whole activity of the family, right next to the TV. The router should be moved to the least used room and use an Ethernet cord to get it from the router to the television. And that may mean a 30-foot cord across the house. Just cover the cord with rugs.
Yeah.
I do that. And shield the router. Now, there is a router developed by a father like yourself in Belgium that is, I think it's called JRS. And the amount of radiation produced by this router is 90% less than what others are. And when it's not being used, it goes to sleep, which is fabulous. And I also learned that you can also limit the radius of the machine, so you're not broadcasting your signals into your neighbor's place, which would be amazing. I mean, how many times when you open up your phone, you see you've got 75 networks that you could connect to. That means the signals from all of those networks are coming into your house, and how you're going to shield that is another issue. But getting the router out of the living room and shielding it, putting a timer on it so that when the family goes to bed, it goes shut off, would be the number one thing to do. Then I would learn to, in the house, keep everybody's phones on airplane mode. This is a little trick of living with these phones. If you're in a home or an office where the phone connects to the Wi-Fi, you can put the phone on airplane mode and reduce the radiation coming from the device you'll still get calls, you can still send texts, always on airplane mode. You can take the pictures or look at pictures. Yeah, so this would be a tremendous effect. Then you need to pay attention when you buy devices now that it doesn't have a chip in it. If anywhere on the device or in the manual it shows the Wi-Fi signal, then you know that this device has been chipped, and it's going to be recording what you do and sending it to the smart meter. Now, the smart meter is another huge source that needs to, if you can, and if you're living in a place where you can get rid of that or prevent it from being installed, if it's still an option, and use an analog. Because those smart meters, and this is a terrible term to use for it, they are pulsing frequencies, which is the worst form of radiation, the pulsing. And then you get a stove, you get a TV, so many products now, and be careful, because there's nobody guarding the gate. There's no consumer control over where they're putting these chips now. I just heard that they've actually got a chip in women's tampons. Oh my God. And I had heard also that there were chips in the baby's diaper so the parents would know when to change the diaper. It's insane. It's truly insane. And there's nobody at the gate controlling how this is being used, how it's being allowed to be sold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Oh man. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's just kind of scary the direction that we're going in. Like we're supposed to be progressing as a society, but it seems like the things that we're doing are actually helping us to regress. So I think this
Yeah.
is helpful to share.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you contacted me to do this because my whole mission is especially to let parents know this because we need to protect the children. And actually, in the process of protecting the kids, we will change our own behavior and protect ourselves. And this is going to be done only by the public, by the consumers. I don't know how soon, if ever, agencies that are responsible to the public. I think it was Harvard Public Health faculty who wrote the first book about the FCC and created the term a captured agency. Captured by the industry it's supposed to be regulating. And this has been the case since the 80s with the FCC. They have not done yet anything to protect the public. 3 times they've been told by the government accounting office and 2 court cases to go back and look at the science now because and they have not done it yet. So it's going to be the public has to take action to protect ourselves. And if you join one of these groups that makes the calls at Congress right now there's 50 bills in front of the Congress from telecom, and they're trying to get total control over where they can put these towers. And we can't stop this. Last year, there were 90 bills and only 4 of them got passed. One of them was quite critical, but from 90 to 4, that was good. Now there are 50. There's an organization called nationalcall.org. And if you just make a phone call to your representative in the Senate, U.S. Senate or House of Representatives, it has an effect. And an attorney, I'm in a group of EMF activists, primarily attorneys, and one who his whole practice is representing cities taking telecom to court to try and prevent the installation of cell towers. And he said that and he wins most of the time. He said, and when the city doesn't win, there's not a heavy financial burden in this. They are not required to pay the legal fees of the telecom or anything else. They're just told to put up the darn tower. And that's a misconception in the public. We are not helpless to this. We can take these petitions to our city council. Actually, when in some cases they need to be informed of this, that they've got more power than they realize. We can make the calls on this nationalcall.org and join the local groups to get more control on this. And we do have that power.
Yeah. And, and finally, what's one myth about EMF exposure that you wish every parent understood the truth about?
One myth. I think that the myth that you need to understand is simply back to our basic premises is that these devices are emitting radiation, and we do know that radiation is harmful. So they need to keep them away from the children and keep them away from themselves. And I say that this campaign, this mission of mine will be successful when television programs and films no longer show people with phones against their heads or those what I call cancer sticks out of their ears, and there's no cell phone being used as an alarm clock on the nightstand. There should be no cellular devices in bedrooms. Yeah, none for anybody. Maybe that's it. It's hard to delimit this to one.
Yeah. Well, Beverly, no, I just want to thank you for this. And, for those who may want to work with you in the future, may need your help in probably creating a home that has way less EMF exposure or is just safer for their families in general, where can families find you and connect with you? So we just want to give you that space to do that now.
I do free phone, 20-minute phone calls, consultations to do an assessment of what your situation is. And you can contact me through youandemf.com or womensmedicинebowl.com. Both of them offer this consultation. And then if you're ready to move forward, I can offer more thorough, review of your situation and make those changes. Yeah.
Beverly, again, thank you so much. And this conversation is a reminder that invisible does not mean harmless. And if you're a parent, this isn't about panic. It's about awareness. Because the small, invisible choices we make today can shape our children's future. Dr. Jensen, thank you for shedding light on something we can't see, but definitely should be paying attention to.
Great. And thank you for doing this, Stefan. Thanks for contacting me.
All right, guys, and thank you, audience, for tuning in. And this is me just reminding you that choosing health is choosing power, possibility, and purpose. Welcome back to week 31 of 52 Choices. This week, we're saying to unfollow 10 accounts that make you feel bad. If scrolling through social media leaves you feeling anxious, jealous, or just off, it might be time for a digital detox. This week's choice is simple but powerful. Unfollow 10 accounts that make you feel bad. Science backs this up. Research from the University of Pennsylvania in 2018 found that reducing social media use to just 30 minutes a day significantly decreased feelings of loneliness and depression. Another study published in Cyber Psychology, Behavior, and Social Networking in 2020 showed that exposure to idealized images can lower self-esteem and increase body dissatisfaction. By curating your feed, you're training your brain to stop comparing and start caring about yourself. When you unfollow people or pages that trigger negativity, you make room for content that inspires, educates, or uplifts you. So this week, take 5 minutes to scroll your following list. Ask yourself, does this account make me feel better or worse about myself? If it's worse, hit unfollow guilt-free. Your mental health deserves better algorithms.